Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The first moment it changed was so small that anyone else in the room might have missed it. It was just a glance. But it lasted a little too long. The four of us were sitting in the living room that evening, soft music humming from the speakers and the warm glow of a single lamp filling the space with golden light. Outside, the city lights flickered through the tall windows, reflecting softly on the glass coffee table between us. Laughter had been easy all night, comfortable, natural, the kind that comes from years of friendship. Yet, something about that moment felt different. I stood up to grab a sweater from the hallway, brushing a loose strand of hair behind my ear as I passed the couch. When I looked back over my shoulder, I noticed him watching me. Not casually. Not the way people normally look when someone walks across a room. His eyes held mine for a second longer than expected. Just long enough for my stomach to tighten. I smiled politely, the same way I always did. But he didn't look away. Instead, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly, almost like he had discovered a secret neither of us had spoken out loud. The room suddenly felt warmer. I tried to ignore it. I really did. Conversations continued around us, my partner teasing his wife about something, glasses clinking softly on the table, but that silent exchange lingered in the air between us like an unfinished sentence. Later that night, things felt even stranger. We were getting ready for bed, the house quiet now except for distant traffic and the faint rustling of curtains moving with the night breeze. I stepped into the guest room, dimly lit by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. He was still standing near the door. At first, I assumed he'd leave. That he'd politely step out and give me space the moment I began changing. That's what anyone would normally do. So I didn't think twice. I slipped off my sweater and placed it on the chair beside the bed. And when I turned slightly, I noticed something that made my breath pause. He hadn't moved. Not even a step. Our eyes met again, closer this time, quieter, filled with a kind of curiosity neither of us had planned. For a second, I waited for him to look away. But instead, he slowly bit his lip. And then he began walking toward me. By the time his fingers brushed lightly against my waist, the air between us felt electric, and deep down, I realized something I hadn't expected at all. I wasn't going to stop him. The air felt different after that moment. Not louder. Not brighter. Just heavier, like something unspoken had quietly settled between us. His hand was still resting lightly at my waist, warm through the thin fabric of my shirt. For a second neither of us moved, as if even breathing too loudly might break whatever fragile thing had just appeared between us. I slowly turned to face him. "Shouldn't you maybe give me a little privacy?" I asked softly. The words sounded teasing, but my voice carried a nervous warmth I couldn't hide. He chuckled under his breath and finally stepped back half a step, though not far enough to create real distance. "You didn't seem very worried about privacy earlier," he replied. I folded my arms, trying to look unimpressed. "Oh, really?" He nodded toward the doorway behind him. "You walked past me 3 times tonight," he said. Each time he looked back. I blinked, surprised. I did not. A quiet smile appeared on his face. "You did." For a moment neither of us spoke. The truth was, he wasn't entirely wrong. The evening had started harmless enough. Dinner with friends. A little wine. Easy conversation. We had known each other for years through our partners. Weekends together, shared vacations, game nights that stretched too late into the night. Comfortable. Safe. But tonight something had shifted. Maybe it was the way he laughed when I told a story earlier, leaning closer than usual. Maybe it was when our hands brushed while reaching for the same glass on the table. Or maybe it was the moment across the couch when our eyes met and neither of us looked away. Little things. Tiny sparks. Now those sparks felt impossible to ignore. He leaned casually against the dresser beside the bed, watching me with that same quiet curiosity. "You're thinking too much," he said gently. I tilted my head. "Oh. And what exactly am I thinking?" He shrugged. that you shouldn't be standing this close to me. I opened my mouth to respond, but he stepped forward again. Not quickly. Slowly. Carefully. The distance between us closed until I could feel the warmth of his presence again. My heartbeat picked up, louder in my ears than the faint music still playing somewhere down the hallway. I should have stepped away. I knew that. But instead my hand moved almost on its own, brushing lightly against his arm as I reached past him to place my sweater on the chair. The contact lasted barely a second. Yet neither of us pulled away. Our fingers lingered there, barely touching. His eyes softened, searching mine as if waiting for some kind of answer. Then, very quietly, he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I looked at our hands, still resting together. And instead of speaking, I let my fingers close around his. The room had gone completely still. My fingers were wrapped around his, warm and steady, yet my thoughts were racing faster than they had all night. Neither of us spoke. From somewhere down the hallway, faint laughter drifted through the house, our partners still talking in the living room, unaware that the air inside this quiet guest room had changed. I slowly looked up at him. His eyes were searching mine again, but this time there was something deeper there. Not just curiosity. Conflict. "You didn't say it," he murmured. His voice was softer now, almost careful. "Say what?" I asked, even though I knew exactly what he meant. "Tell me to stop." My heart thudded harder. I glanced toward the door behind him, half expecting someone to walk past at any moment. The hallway light spilled faintly into the room, reminding me just how close everyone else was. Too close. "We shouldn't be doing this," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "I know." But neither of us moved. His thumb shifted slightly against my hand, the smallest motion, yet it sent a strange warmth up my arm. I could feel the heat of him standing so near, the quiet tension in the space between us. Years of friendship were suddenly standing in the room with us. Dinner parties. Road trips. Shared jokes that had stretched late into the night. All of it felt fragile now. "You're thinking about them," he said gently. I swallowed. "Of course I am." He looked down at our hands, still joined together like they had forgotten how to separate. "So am I." For a moment we both just stood there, breathing the same quiet air. Then he slowly lifted his gaze back to mine. "But if we're being honest," he said quietly, "this didn't start tonight." My brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" A faint smile touched his face, though it wasn't playful this time. "You remember the lake trip last summer?" My stomach tightened immediately. Of course I remembered. Late evening. Everyone gathered around the dock. The sun fading behind the water. And the moment our shoulders brushed when we both leaned back against the railing. We had laughed it off then. Ignored the strange pause that followed. "See," he said softly, noticing my reaction. "You remember." I exhaled slowly. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. But you're still standing here. And you're still holding my hand." His words hung gently between us. Without realizing it, we had both stepped closer again. The distance between us had almost disappeared. I could hear his breathing now. Slow. Unsteady. My free hand lifted slightly, hovering near his chest before I could stop myself. "If someone walks in," I began. "They won't." "You don't know that." His voice dropped lower. "Maybe not." My fingers brushed lightly against his shirt. The contact was small, but it felt like standing at the edge of something we couldn't take back. Our faces were only inches apart now. My heart pounded. His hand tightened slightly around mine. And just as he began leaning closer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The sound of footsteps outside the door froze both of us instantly. His movement stopped halfway, his face still only inches from mine. For a long second, neither of us breathed, both listening to the soft rhythm of someone walking down the hallway. The steps passed. A door somewhere further down the hall clicked shut. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt heavier, charged. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "That was close," I whispered. He laughed quietly, the kind of nervous laugh that escapes when tension has nowhere else to go. Yeah, he said. Way too close. Neither of us stepped away, though. If anything, we had somehow ended up even nearer than before. My hand was still resting against his chest where it had drifted earlier. Beneath my fingertips, I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through the fabric of his shirt. Fast. Almost matching mine. He glanced down at my hand, then back up at me. You're still doing it, he said softly. Doing what? Not letting go. I followed his gaze and realized he was right. My fingers were lightly gripping the front of his shirt without me even noticing. Embarrassment mixed with something warmer in my chest. I guess I forgot, I murmured. Did you? His voice had lowered again, softer than before. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe. He tilted his head slightly, studying me in that quiet way of his that always made it feel like he could see more than he said. You're nervous, he observed. I raised an eyebrow. You're not. He smiled faintly. Oh, I definitely am. For a moment we both laughed, the sound soft and breathy in the dim room. It eased the tension just enough to make the moment feel real again. But the closeness never disappeared. The air between us still hummed. Do you ever think, he said after a moment, about how strange this is? I looked up at him. Strange. For people in the same house, he continued quietly. And somehow the quietest room feels like the loudest place in the world. I couldn't help smiling at that. That's a very poetic way to describe a bad decision. He grinned. Maybe. Then the smile slowly faded as his eyes drifted back to mine. The room grew quiet again. Outside, the wind brushed softly against the window. The curtains moved slightly, letting cool night air slip into the warm glow of the lamp beside the bed. His hand moved carefully from mine to my wrist, gentle, almost hesitant. Not pulling, just resting there. My pulse jumped beneath his fingers. You can still tell me to stop, he said again, barely above a whisper. I met his gaze. The space between us felt impossibly small now. I know. Then why haven't you? My breath caught slightly as his hand slowly slid from my wrist back to my waist, the same place it had been before. Closer. Warmer. His forehead nearly touched mine now. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like the whole room could hear it. For a moment we simply stood there, sharing the same breath. And then he leaned just a little closer. The space between us had almost disappeared. His breath brushed softly against my cheek as he leaned closer, his hand still resting at my waist. I could feel the warmth of his palm through the thin fabric, steady and careful, yet impossible to ignore. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like the quiet room was echoing with it. Neither of us spoke. We were standing on the edge of something we both understood, and neither of us had the courage to name. Then a soft knock tapped against the door. Both of us jumped back instantly. The moment shattered like glass. Hey, a familiar voice called from the hallway. Are you two still awake? It was her. My chest tightened. He ran a hand through his hair quickly, stepping away as if the distance could erase the last few minutes. Yeah, he answered, his voice slightly strained. Just talking. The door opened halfway, and she leaned against the frame casually. Her eyes moved between us. Once. Twice. For a moment she said nothing. Then she smiled, but it wasn't the carefree smile I expected. It was knowing. Well, she said slowly, that's good. I felt my stomach drop. The room suddenly felt too small. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. The soft click sounded far louder than it should have. You two always did have interesting conversations, she added. I tried to laugh, but it came out weak. What do you mean by that? Her eyes flicked briefly toward him. Then back to me. You really think I didn't notice? My pulse jumped. Notice what? I asked carefully. She folded her arms, leaning lightly against the dresser. The looks. Silence filled the room again. No one else caught it, she continued calmly. But I did. He exhaled slowly beside me. This isn't what it looks like, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Really? Her tone wasn't angry. If anything, it was curious. You two have been dancing around this for months, she said quietly. Maybe longer. My mind raced. Why didn't you say anything before? I asked. Her gaze softened slightly. Because I wasn't sure if it was real, or just my imagination. Then she glanced down at the small space between us. The distance we had created after she knocked. But it clearly hadn't been enough. You're standing awfully close for people who are just talking. Neither of us answered. The silence said more than words ever could. For a long moment she studied both of us. Then something unexpected happened. She sighed softly. I guess the real question, she said, is whether either of you are going to admit what's happening or keep pretending. The tension snapped back into the room instantly. Stronger than before. My chest rose and fell slowly as I looked from her to him. His eyes met mine again. That same pull. That same unspoken energy. Except now, it wasn't hidden anymore. He took a small step toward me. I didn't move away. Behind us, she watched quietly. No anger. No shock. Just quiet understanding. My voice barely came out. We shouldn't, but even as I said it, my hand found his again. His fingers closed around mine. Firm. Certain. And this time, neither of us tried to pull away. The room felt smaller with every second that passed. His fingers were still wrapped around mine, firm now, no longer hesitant. The quiet tension that had been building all night wasn't hiding anymore. It was out in the open, breathing in the same air as all three of us. I looked at her. She leaned casually against the dresser, arms folded, watching us with calm eyes. Not shocked. Not angry. Just aware. The silence stretched until it almost hurt. Then she spoke again. So, she said softly, are we going to stand here pretending this isn't happening? My throat felt dry. I never meant for things to get complicated, I murmured. He let out a quiet breath beside me. Neither did I. But even as he said it, his thumb brushed lightly across my hand. The small motion sent warmth rushing up my arm again. I felt it. He felt it. And she definitely noticed it. A faint smile appeared on her face. That's the thing about feelings, she said. They don't really ask permission. Her words hung in the air. My chest rose slowly as I looked back at him. Up close, I could see the same storm of emotions in his eyes, hesitation, excitement, disbelief at how far the night had gone. But beneath all of that, something deeper, something honest. I should probably walk away, he said quietly. You probably should, I replied. Neither of us moved. A small laugh escaped him, soft and breathless. Yeah, that's the problem. The lamp beside the bed cast warm light across the room, catching the nervous smile on my face. For a moment, everything slowed. The quiet hum of the house. The distant sound of the wind brushing the windows. The warmth of his hand holding mine. Then suddenly he stepped closer. Not rushed. Not reckless. Just certain. My heart jumped as his other hand rose gently to my cheek, warm and steady. The touch was soft, careful, as if he were still giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. Behind us, she watched silently. Then she spoke again, her voice calm but firm. Just be honest with yourselves. Those words seemed to unlock something inside both of us. He looked into my eyes one last time. Are you sure? He asked. My answer came out as a whisper. Yes. And finally the distance between us disappeared. He pulled me into an embrace, the tension of the entire night releasing at once as we held each other tightly. It wasn't rushed or careless. It was slow. Real. Months of silent glances and unspoken curiosity finally finding their way into a single moment. But the real surprise came seconds later. Her voice again, soft, thoughtful. Well, she said with a small smile, I guess we're all being honest tonight. And suddenly I realized, this night wasn't ending the way any of us had expected. It was only just beginning. For a long moment after everything settled, the room was quiet again. Not the tense silence from earlier. This one felt softer, calmer. I was still standing close to him, my hand resting lightly against his arm. The warmth between us hadn't disappeared, but it had changed. The nervous energy that had filled the room before had finally eased into something steadier. Something real. Across the room, she leaned back against the dresser again, watching us with a thoughtful expression. No one rushed to speak. The lamp beside the bed cast a warm glow across the walls, and the faint sound of wind brushing against the window filled the quiet space. I finally exhaled. "Well," I said softly, almost laughing at the absurdity of the moment. That escalated faster than I expected. He rubbed the back of his neck with a shy smile. "Yeah, same." For someone who had seemed so confident earlier, he suddenly looked almost boyish standing there. That made me smile. For months, maybe longer, there had been this invisible current between us. Small looks, quiet moments, a strange awareness whenever we were in the same room. And tonight it had finally surfaced. But the surprising part wasn't the attraction. It was the honesty that followed. She stepped forward slowly, her voice calm. "You two look relieved." I glanced at him. She wasn't wrong. Relief was exactly what it felt like. "Maybe because we stopped pretending," he said. She nodded slightly. "That's usually the hardest part." I studied her face carefully. "You're really okay with all this?" I asked. She shrugged gently. "I've known you both long enough to recognize something real when I see it." Her tone wasn't dramatic or emotional, just honest. That simple acceptance settled something deep inside my chest. The room suddenly felt lighter. He reached for my hand again, slower this time, giving me the chance to move away if I wanted. I didn't. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like the moment earlier, but now there was no hesitation behind it. Just warmth. Just connection. For a while the three of us stood there quietly, the strange, unexpected turn of the evening slowly sinking in. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the window like distant stars. I looked at him again. "You realize tomorrow is going to be awkward," I said with a small grin. He laughed. "Oh, definitely." "But," he added, squeezing my hand gently, "I think tonight was worth it." I felt the same way. Some nights change nothing. And some nights change everything. As the warm light filled the room and our laughter slowly replaced the earlier tension, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the most unexpected moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. And this night, none of us would ever forget.